Welcome to the Patriots Pulse post-game show. I'm your host, John Serenitas, and as always, I'm joined by my partner, John Lyons, and after he was on assignment last week, he's back with me tonight, and order has been restored. We're back, ladies and gentlemen. John and John talking Patriots football. Patriots with an impressive 33-15 win over the New York Giants on Monday Night Football. Their first Monday Night Football appearance, John, in 3 years. The last time they played on Monday Night Football, ironically enough, was here at home against the Chicago Bears. If you remember, that was that ugly rain game that they lost. But this game was never in doubt tonight. In what was a rarity, they got off to a really good start in the first half, jumped all over the Giants, scored 30 first-half points en route to a 33-15 win, a dominant three-phase performance from start to finish.
Yeah, that last Monday night game against the Bears, John, the only memorable thing was Bailey Zappi singing Stacy's Mom. Other than that, it was a bloodbath. Now you fast forward here, and you hit the nail on the head. Three-phase win, because I think this game turned on special teams. I mean, this was a 3-0 game. Marcus Jones has the punt return touchdown. Then the Giants have that, I don't know what you want to call it, that botched field goal, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then they fumble a kick return.
Boo-boo by Koo.
Yeah,
A Koo
I mean,
boo-boo.
maybe they'll turn it into Turfgate on ESPN. I don't know, but then you have that fumbled kickoff that leads to 3 more points. So I mean, really, that's Joe Buck talked about this on the broadcast. That's kind of a 13-point swing. It took 3 points off the board for the Giants, gave the Patriots 7. I mean, look, the Patriots are the better team here. We all expected them to win, but I think it was just interesting that so much. And look, Drake May looked like an MVP tonight. The defense had some really good moments. But if you're going to win in the playoffs, you're going to need to play well in all 3 phases. And I thought special teams was where this game turned. And then, of course, then May took over and was phenomenal after that.
Yeah, and before we continue the conversation here, we know it's late. It's about 11:30, almost 11:30 on Monday night here, but feel free to join the show. We are coming to you live on our YouTube page, Facebook, X, and our Twitch page as well. So we'd love to hear from you. This is the show of the fans, as I like to say all the time. We know you have plenty of other options. John and I would love to have you join the conversation. Talk some football with us. Again, Patriots defeating the New York Giants on Monday Night Football 33-15 to improve to 11-2 on the season. The Patriots now have a half-game lead over the Denver Broncos for the number 1 seed in the AFC, which continues to be hard to believe, John, as we head into bye week. Finally, week 14 is upon us next week. Patriots have their bye week, but it is hard to believe that 13 weeks into this season, and we'll get into this more here in a little bit, but 13 weeks into this season, this team is the number 1 seed in the AFC, and they are a legitimate contender. The AFC is a mess right now. The teams that we thought would contend are all fighting for their playoff lives. The Patriots, especially after tonight, are in a really prime spot to potentially make a deep playoff run and potentially do it as a number 1 seed.
Then you can extend that out to the Chicago Bears and the NFC being the number 1 seed there. There's a lot of teams with quick turnarounds that are at the top of their conferences. Patriots right at the head of that train. And what is it? I mean, you look at where we were, John, this time last year, December 1st, 2024. We were talking about really 2 things. Was Gerard Mayo going to keep his job? And where were the Patriots going to draft? I mean, we would talk about the games themselves on our post-game show, but that would inevitably, each post-game show would end up, how does this affect draft position? How does Mayo look? Now we're sitting here talking about, are they going to get the bye? Are they going to be the 1 seed? What's a good matchup for them in the playoffs? It really is a really impressive turnaround from where they were all the way to now. I give Mike Vrabel a ton of credit. Drake May and his jump forward from last year, and he showed flashes last year, but he's not turning the ball over nearly as much this year. The deep ball was there at times last year. It's been a huge asset this year. He's been the best guy in the league throwing the deep ball. And I thought tonight, you saw an increased number of checkdowns. You saw more short passes. That was really good to see. So it's kind of all the things kind of built up slowly in the offseason and in training camp all the way through tonight. Now they're sitting here as one of the best teams in the NFL.
Yeah, and you talk about Drake May and his night, 24 of 31, 282 yards, 2 touchdown passes, no interceptions, passer rating of 126. Coming into the night, he was 3rd in the NFL in passer rating. Actually, I believe, I'm sorry, I take that back. He was 2nd in the NFL in passer rating, slightly behind Matthew Stafford. they appear to be the two front runners for the MVP right now. But again, when we've seen Drake May beyond this season, these are the kinds of numbers he's put up consistently. He had another one of these classic Drake May nights that we've seen this season from him where he doesn't throw for 300 yards, but he's extremely efficient. He's within 5 or 6 completions of his total passes. He throws a couple of touchdown passes. He plays smart. He takes care of the football. He didn't do that last week in Cincinnati. I get that. But tonight, I thought he played one of his cleaner, more efficient games this season.
Yeah, and you use that word efficiency, and I think that really hits the nail on the head for Drake May tonight. 24 of 31, 282 yards. He took 3 sacks, but only lost 6 yards. I mean, there were times in the past where he'd take 2 or 3 sacks and he'd lose 15 yards. And that's a little subtle thing, though, that makes a difference. And some of the, I mean, that touchdown throw to Kyle Williams was
Yeah, it
awesome.
was beautiful. And the
And
catch
I'm
and
not
the
a
catch was fantastic too.
I
I
agree.
mean,
And
that was a
Ramondre
much harder catch than people think it looked like on TV at least.
I agree with you totally. And Ramondre Stevenson's pass blocking on that play, he had to go out and block the defensive end off the edge there. Like that was a really impressive pass blocking rep from Stevenson. I thought the touchdown pass to Kayshon Boutte as well. I'm not a huge goal line fade guy, but I thought Kayshon Boutte did a great job separating late on the catch. May put it in the only spot he could get it. I mean, May was really good. And it wasn't just that. I mean, there was that chunk play to Ramondre Stevenson near the end of the first half, which the Giants sold out on a blitz. May saw it, got rid of the ball to a check down, and Stevenson for a big gain. Like things like that were really impressive to see tonight from May. I mean, really, considering you're without your left tackle, you're without your left guard, your right tackle missed part of the game last week due to an illness. Your center got put on the injury report today with an illness. And I mean, first of all, the offensive line I thought performed pretty admirably in those circumstances. But May, despite all that, it was like it didn't really bother him that much.
No, it didn't. And to your point, despite having Vidarian Lowe at left tackle, Ben Brown at left guard, there was some uncertainty as to whether or not Bradbury was going to play. He wasn't feeling well. Despite all of that, May was calm, he was collected, and he executed. And that's what we've become accustomed to seeing from him this year. He's playing at such a high level that you're starting to get to a point now where it's a week-to-week thing. And I'm not going to say you're taking it for granted, but now it's an expectation. He's well past the rookie second-year quarterback phase. Now we're going to expect these types of performances out of him on a week-to-week basis. Lauren Gaudette checks in. She says another solid win, but only scoring 3 points in the second half. But is that Pats playing conservative, or the Pats still aren't being consistent? I think Lauren brings up a good point, John. I think it's a combination of both. I think that they were playing it closer to the vest. And by the way, coming into this game, the New York Giants had the worst run defense in the league. I said it coming into the game today. I felt that, you know what? Run the ball 35 times if you have to. That run defense is awful, which is a surprise when you consider how good their defensive line is. That being said, I do think it wasn't all that they were conservative in the second half. I thought there were some consistency issues there as well, some breakdowns in protection. There was a couple of miscommunications. Penalty on the Hunter Henry touchdown. There were penalties on both teams that negated the score. If you want to nitpick, and I think Lauren is nitpicking here, but I do think in her defense she's bringing up a good point. If you want to nitpick, when you look at this game, you would have wanted them to play better in the second half.
Yeah, and I think defensively and special teams wise, they kept their foot on the gas pedal the whole game. Offensively, maybe there was a little let up there. And I go to two things to Lauren's point. First of all, they did miss a field goal early in the second half. So that could have, that would have been 3 more points there. Borregales just shanked that one. And also there was, John, you mentioned the breakdown and protection. I thought an ill-timed sack, 2nd and 8, just under 12 minutes to go in the fourth quarter at the Giants 41. They took a sack for a 4-yard loss. I mean, if you get positive yards on that play, maybe you end up going down and scoring. You mentioned as well the Hunter Henry, and of course the Henry touchdown. It was Ben Brown just changing into a 3-point stance, and really had no effect on the play, that penalty, but still wipes it off there. So, I think it was a combination of maybe a little bit more conservative, a little more running the ball, and just a couple ill-timed mistakes that really took 10 points off the board.
Lauren checks back in. She says, I was watching the Manning cast and they both love Drake May and seem to be impressed.
That's good. Yeah.
I mean, look, if he's getting the Manning
I'll take
stamp
that
of
coming from
approval,
Peyton Manning.
yeah,
That guy's
I
won
was
the
going to say.
MVP.
And as much as people around here hate Eli, if he's going to get the Manning stamp of approval, I'm on it. I'm all in on that. We know who they are, whether you like them or not. I do think their opinion carries weight around NFL circles. And I think if they're saying on national television, hey, we like this kid, we're impressed with him, I think if you're a Patriots fan, that's a good thing. Take it as a compliment and be excited that this is your quarterback and he's setting himself up to be a franchise quarterback and the heir apparent to Tom Brady, the real heir apparent for the next decade plus. I mean, again, whether you like the Mannings or not is irrelevant. Their opinion matters. And if they think this kid's good, then you know what? If you're a Patriots fan, that should make you feel good.
Yeah, and I think you're seeing now teams are game planning to stop him, and he's still playing well. And that's a really encouraging sign because it's not like last year when he had, just a handful of starts under his belt, or even early this year when it was he's in the McDaniels offense. What's it's going to look like? I mean, we're sitting here, they're 13 games in, John. Teams are game planning to stop. And we saw Cincinnati have some success early in that game, and a lot of that was May looking shaky himself. But these teams are game planning to stop him, and he's still putting up decent numbers. They're still winning. Like, to me, as a Patriots fan, that's the most encouraging part because we saw this when it was Mac Jones or Bailey Zappi before. Once teams really figured those guys out and started game planning, things got a lot more difficult. And obviously, going from McDaniels to Patricia made it even harder. But things got more difficult, whereas now teams are game planning to stop May in this offense and they're still struggling to do so. So that's really encouraging to me.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Now, the receiver numbers left something to be desired. Hunter Henry led the way once again with 4 catches for 73 yards. Ramondre Stevenson, 3 for 40. Kayshon Boutte had 4 for 35. And the touchdown catch, Kyle Williams had 1 for 33. That was a touchdown catch. Stephon Diggs, 3 for 26, man. Look, I know that it's been every 2 weeks he gives you that 100-yard performance, it seems like this season. But I'd like to start seeing more out of him. He's, quote unquote, your number one receiver. I'd like to start seeing more production from the guy. I don't think they're getting enough out of him.
And I will say, though, the Cincinnati game, he had that huge third down catch late. And in this game, I think a couple of those 3 catches went for first down. So it's like, I looked it up earlier. It's like 35 of his 55 catches at the time were for first downs. It's like some crazy number. Like, he's converting a ton of first downs. I'd like to see more overall production there. And I think this is something, if you want a preview of our New England Football Journal draft shows in the spring, tight end or receiver is still going to be a need come free agency in the draft. They're still missing that A-plus level weapon, whether it's a tight end or receiver. And I think that correlates directly to and causes their low red zone struggles, right? Because in all those years that they were good in the red zone with McDaniels, whether it was with Brady or Castle or whoever, well, they had Randy Moss and they had Rob Gronkowski. They had A-plus low red weapons, and they have a lot of good weapons now, but they don't yet have that A-plus guy. And I think, again, we're seeing a good collection of receivers who are playing much better than a year ago. The tight ends are playing well, but that's just the nature of, again, they're at 11-2. They're way ahead of schedule. That's just the nature of, they couldn't address all that stuff in one off season last year.
And to kind of piggyback off of Lauren expressing some concern about their performance in the second half, I'm going to continue the negativity theme in that sense. Again, coming into this game, the Giants' run defense, to call it horrendous would be an understatement. They are beyond horrendous in terms of stopping the run. Patriots rushed for 119 yards. They ran the ball 29 times. That includes Travion Henderson, Ramondre Stevenson, Drake May. I mean, again, if you want to nitpick when you're playing a team that is really flawed in one area, you want to take advantage of that. The reason I bring it up now, and it's to your point about them addressing certain areas next offseason, this goes to what you're saying about their struggles in the red zone, specifically the low red zone area. Their running game is pretty good from the 20 to the 20, but their running game needs to give them more in those red zone situations. Once again tonight, they didn't get enough. And again, I know we're nitpicking here. This is an 11-2 football team that just blew out the New York Giants. I get that. And they were dominant tonight in all three phases, but you could still nitpick and say that, hey, if this team's going to be a legitimate playoff contender come January, these are areas they need to improve in.
Yeah, and I think the short yardage run game, right? We've been talking about that for a long time now. And some of that also, too, John, interior of the offensive line, right? Like Garrett Bradbury's probably a 1 year thing, right? Jared Wilson's been inconsistent this year as well. And I think Ben Brown's inconsistent as well. You hope next year, Jared Wilson in his second year will be more consistent and a little bit better. And then you'll have, whether it's a young player at center or a veteran, another veteran, you'll have an improvement there going forward. So some of that's also the interior of the offensive line. But I thought they ran the ball not not as great as maybe you'd hope. I mean, Giants were giving up 5.9 yards per carry coming into this game, which is the worst in the NFL. But I think they ran it much better than they had the previous couple weeks. So I think it was an encouraging step forward. And I also wonder too, like, this is a really late bye week here. And we've seen them finally over the last couple weeks, whether it's Milton Williams, Will Campbell, finally run into injury issues. I do wonder for some of these guys, especially along that offensive line, if there is a little bit of fatigue in guys that have been playing basically nonstop football since late July to now. And I wouldn't be shocked, John, if they come out of the bye week running and I'm not telling you they're going to all of a sudden be great at running the ball, but running the ball better than they have throughout most of this season.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point with the late bye week. I definitely think it affected them last week. You could see that they had sea legs. They were heavy legged last week at times against Cincinnati, and I think you saw it a little bit tonight. Not as much. Obviously, they had the extra day to prepare and to rest coming into this game. But that being said, I think against Cincinnati, they look like a tired football team at times.
Yeah.
They look like a team that had hit a little bit of a wall. So yes, I'm not, for the record, I'm not a fan of the late bye. I don't like a bye
I
this
think
late.
it's too late. Like, this
I
is
think it's
too
too
late.
late. Yeah, this is too
Yeah.
late. I think an ideal window for your bye is between week 8 and week 10, in my opinion. But I could take 11 or 12, but once you get past week 12, I think it's too late. I think that they're on fumes. They were running on fumes last week. They were a little bit better tonight, but you can still see it. This is a tired football team. And to your point, they're starting to get banged up too. You've lost Will Campbell the last couple of weeks. You've lost Milton Williams. I think that the lengthy season and going since training camp did catch up to them. And having the late bye to a degree did catch up to them with some of these injuries. That's not to say that they wouldn't have suffered these injuries if they had an earlier bye. Not what I'm saying at all. But what I'm saying is you do run the risk of accumulating injuries, and injuries like this when you have a later bye. PJ Matz checks in. It's nice to have a football team again. PJ, it's nice to hear from you, man. You've been a stranger this season. It's nice of you to jump on and join us. Great to hear from you again. Checks back in, and she says, "Oh, what do you say? Maybe we can't pull it up." Oh, there it is. Glad to bring glad little negativity to the show, but I was slightly. Well, hold on. Some technical issues here, folks. We're working on them.
Glad
to bring a little negativity to the show, but I was slightly uncomfortable seeing the Pats.
Yeah.
By being in the fourth. Yeah, but felt like they had the win. Are we at a point now where we're back to where we were during the dynasty years where if they're not blowing somebody out and they're not winning a certain way that we're unhappy?
Yeah, they only won by 30, John. It's a disaster. Look, we're not there yet. Okay, we're not there yet. But it's nice that we're kind of heading in that direction a little bit. And I think again, a lot of this is what you and I are thinking about now, through 13 games or whatever, is how is this going to look in mid to late January? And I think that's a great place to be in. Considering, look, this team won 8 games combined the previous 2 years. We're already at 11. So now that we're in the mode of, okay, what are they doing really well right now that's going to help them in January, and what do they need to do better in order to win in January? And that's a nice place to be. Now, if in the next 2 or 3 years they win a Super Bowl, then I think we'll be right back to that spot where if they don't win 40-7, people will be upset. But I don't think we're there yet. I think we're at the point we're building to that. We're just, you got to actually win a Super Bowl before you can, go there.
You are watching the Patriots Pulse post-game show. I'm your host, John Saranitas. As always, I'm joined by my partner, WEI's John Lyons. Patriots with a 33-15 win over the New York Giants on Monday Night Football. With the win, the Patriots improved to 11-2 on the season, and they go into their bye week finally this week before they return to action 2 weeks from yesterday when the Buffalo Bills come to town for a huge game, a game that can all but seal the AFC East for the New England Patriots with a win. Hard to believe that we're saying that. This is where we're at. John, as far as the defense is concerned, look, I think that this game is going to be remembered, and there were a lot of big plays. But when we think about this game, we're going to remember the Marcus Jones 94-yard punt return for a touchdown that kind of set the tone for the night. Once again, Marcus Jones, you see why he got he got the bag a couple of weeks ago. That this organization views him as a big part of this team's future, and you saw why tonight. He sets the tone with the 94-yard punt return touchdown. But then I think Christian Ellis also set a tone when he blew up Jackson Dart along the Giants sideline. And a couple of Giants players, namely center John Michael Schmitz, didn't like it. He went after Ellis. But that play in many ways also set the tone for this game because it let the Giants know that you're not in Detroit anymore. We're not going to let you hang around and make plays and make this a game, and we're going to have to pull it out late. We're going to dominate this game. And between the punt return and the hit, the Patriots sent that message.
Yeah, and Christian Ellis, I think this was his best game as a Patriot. 10 tackles. You mentioned that big hit on Dart. Also helped
Two
force the
big
fumble
hits.
on that
Yeah.
kickoff return. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I mean, he was all over the place tonight. I also thought Christian Barmore was great tonight. In the stat sheet, it's only 5 tackles, right? It doesn't jump out at you, but considering there's no Milton Williams, there's no Kairos Tonga, he's really the guy there. I thought he was flying all over the place. He was making impactful plays. He was pushing the pocket, creating pressure. Again, only 5 tackles, so it doesn't really jump out at you. But I thought watching the game, he was really impactful in this game. Elijah Ponder as well got a sack and a tackle for loss. Really good, I think, in this game in a spot role. And I thought Caleb Chason, again, didn't jump. He had a couple QB hits, no sacks, but he's a guy that I feel like has been kind of quiet the second half of this season. He showed up today, especially early in this game. So I thought this defense, a lot of really good individual performances that added up to a pretty good night overall.
Yeah, and it was nice to see them not give up an opening drive score, even though they lost the coin toss. Giants deferred, Patriots take the ball, go down, kick the field goal, go up 3-0. But when the Giants got the ball back, they didn't give up a score. So that's a plus. You got to take that. That's been a problem for them this year. Not giving up that opening drive score, I think, is a win within the game. So you got to look at it that way in terms of their defense. Marcus Jones, I mean, he's a special player. I mentioned the 94-yard punt return for a touchdown. I think it gets lost on people sometimes, John, just how important special teams are in this game and how those types of plays are game-altering plays. And he really set the tone with that return.
And I would add, right, he's had 2 punt returns for touchdowns this year. One of them changed the game against the Carolina Panthers, and it ended up being a blowout, which he set in motion. At that time, let's not forget, Patriots are 1-2 at that time entering that game. They had just had that bad game against the Steelers. Then tonight, it's a 3-0 game. Giants are kind of battling. It's early. He takes that back, and you're like, okay, now there's some distance. Then they score again at 17-0, right? And you mentioned special teams overall. I thought the Patriots' special teams were awesome tonight. And as much as tonight is about Drake May looking like an MVP and Christian Ellis and how well he played on defense and their defense overall, it's Christian Ellis's forced fumble on special teams. It's the missed botched field goal by the Giants. It's
Yeah,
Marcus
what the
Jones's
hell
punt
was
return.
that? That that was befuddling to me. I mean, his foot gets stuck in the turf. The holder bobbles the snap. It really, in many ways, encapsulates why the New York Giants are a 2-11 shit show right now.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the first take segment tomorrow about the ghost of Bill Belichick messing up the turf and its turf gate for the next 6 months. I'm really looking forward to that. But it's funny that and Borgals did miss a field goal, but he hit everything else. And the Patriots special teams, such a huge problem, John, in 2021, in 2022, and 2023. Give credit to Coach Jeremy Springer. Started to get better last year, has been much better this year, has helped them win multiple games this year as well. I mean, even go back to that Falcons game. You win 24-23 because they miss an extra point. Like, this stuff matters a lot. And I think I give credit to Coach Springer on it. I also give a lot of credit to Mike Vrabel because you can tell it's a legitimate focus for them. You can tell guys are bought in on special teams. And again, I thought the game tonight changed on that Marcus Jones part. If he just gets tackled there and they have to drive, maybe they do score, but it's probably not 30-7 at halftime, right? I mean, it's probably a closer game and you're in a fight and you probably still win, don't get me wrong, but it's a different game if he doesn't take that back.
And it's hard to believe that this football team has won 10 games in a row.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe. And again, look, coming into the season, we knew they were going to be better. I don't think there was anybody in this area that didn't think this football team would be better because you knew that they were going to be better coached. You knew that there was an upgrade in talent through free agency in the draft. I think we all universally thought this team should be anywhere from 4 to 5 games better than they've been each of the last 2 years. Again, I feel like we've been saying this every week now for the past month. No one saw this coming, though. No one saw going into their bye that they would be 11-2 in the number 1 seed in the AFC. Now, it does bring me back a little bit to 2021, and you hope when they come out of the bye that they don't fall apart like that team did. But again, no one saw this coming, man. And think about that. 10 wins in a row. That's hard to do in any league, let alone the NFL, where you're only playing one game a week.
Yeah, I thought they would win 9 games this season, and they had 9 wins by mid-November. I mean, really, that's the step forward that they've taken. Look, you look at the rest of the schedule, I think you're looking at 13 wins at a minimum. Like, I mean, really, if they go to I think they'll go 3-1 in the Final Four, but even if they go 2-2, you're 13-4 after winning 8 games total the previous 2 years. I mean, you also gotta give, and I know the season's not over yet, we'll talk about this at the end of the season, but I think you do gotta give credit to Robert Kraft for realizing Gerard Mayo wasn't the guy, having the guts to admit he wasn't the guy, fire him, and bring in Vrabel. Like, sometimes we get on owners' cases for firing guys too quickly, and I do think that's a big problem in the NFL and really all sports in general. But this was a case where it really just wasn't working and it was not going to work, and he made the right call, and I think he deserves credit for that, and credit to Vrabel for hiring a really, really good coaching staff, and of course, the front office for bringing in all this talent that they did.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think hats off to all parties involved. I mean, it starts with good ownership. And I think, look, it wasn't Gerard Mayo's fault in a lot of ways. He was put in a no-win situation. He obviously needed more time to marinate as a coach so that he could step into that role. But he also, in my opinion, wasn't necessarily equipped to succeed. All of that being said, they had a ton of cap space. Kraft makes the decision, hires Vrabel, who, let's face it, he wanted all along as Bill Belichick's replacement. Brings in Vrabel. Vrabel comes in at the right time. They had already drafted Drake May, so they had the potential franchise quarterback. They had over $100 million in cap space to spend. He walked into the ideal situation, and he wanted to be here. He could have had the Jets job. He could have had 2 or 3 other jobs. At the end of the day, this is where he wanted to be. This organization meant something to him as someone who played here, won 3 Super Bowls here. Ultimately, it wasn't just that. He was also walking into a good situation. To your point, he made the most of the situation, and it's showing now in the performance of the team. And I think in terms of the trajectory of this football team moving forward to the rest of the season, I think the conversation needs to pivot now, John. I think the conversation now needs to be they need to secure this number 1 seed. I think it would be huge for this football team if they can lock down the number 1 seed, get the bye, get healthy, but also now the road to Santa Clara goes through Foxborough, which, as we know, can be a tough road if you have to come here. The weather can be a factor. We know if this fan base is engaged, they can make this a tough place to play, provided they're not selling their tickets to the visiting team. But all that being said, now I think we can have a legitimate conversation about them locking down the number 1 seed.
I think, look, the number 1 seed is always important to have the extra rest, not have to go through an extra game, extra time to prepare. But I think for this Patriots team specifically, it's a little extra important. We talked earlier in the show about the late bye and them starting to get a little banged up. And look, going back to July, me and you and most of the people down there covering the team, what was our biggest concern? It was depth. Well, that was everybody's either number one or number two concern. You don't wanna have to test your they don't have a ton of depth still, and you don't wanna have to test that in an extra playoff game or fighting for a playoff spot the last week of the season. You wanna be able to go in and say, "Hey, we have this late bye. We're gonna rest up. We'll have a good last 4 games and then we'll have another bye, and then we only have to win 2 games to go to the Super Bowl," right? So I think for every team, the bye is important, but for a team that it can at some spots is as thin as the Patriots and that is just starting to get banged up, I think it's extra important for a team like that.
Yeah, and I think the other part of this is it's not just to get healthy and to play one less game, but I think the other part of it for me is we really don't know how this is all going to shape out in the AFC. It's so wide open. You have multiple 8-4 teams. Who knows who you would get here in the divisional round if, let's say, they did secure the bye. So I think that's the other part of it here, because I do think it's important to remember if they end up the 2 seed and let's say somehow Kansas City gets in there as the 7. Do you want to see the Kansas City Chiefs here in the opening round of the playoffs? I don't think so. I don't care what they've looked like this year. I don't want anything to do with Mahomes and Reed in week 1 of the playoffs. I'll pass. So I think that adds even more of a level of incentive for them to secure this bye, because not only do you want to get healthier and you want your coaching staff to have more time to prepare, but I also think potentially from a matchup standpoint, if you end up the 2 seed, it may not go the way you wanted to. And let's be honest here, man. If this team ends up winning 13, 14 games, the expectation around here isn't going to be, well, hey, they got into the playoffs. If they could just give it a good effort, we'll be happy. No, people around here will be talking Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I think to your point, because the AFC is so out of whack, if you're the 2 seed, you could get the Chiefs in the first playoff game, you could get the Bills in the first playoff game,
Yeah.
you could maybe get the Ravens in the first playoff game, the Bengals with a healthy Joe Burrow,
All
like
teams
a
that are
chance.
battle tested, right? And
Yeah,
teams that have won in the playoffs in recent years.
and I understand that every single one of those teams I just mentioned is having a down year. But to your point, and I agree with you, not only are they battle tested, but in one game, Lamar Jackson and Roquan Smith and Kyle Hamilton and Derrick Henry in the playoffs, or Patrick Mahomes and Chris Jones and Andy Reid in the like. I'm not saying the Patriots can't win those games, but what I'm saying is you don't want to have you're going to have to play one of those teams if you're going to get to a Super Bowl, maybe two. You don't want to have to play three of them, including Wild Card Weekend in Drake May's first ever playoff game, Will Campbell's first ever playoff game. A lot of these guys, Christian Gonzalez in his third year here, still would be his first ever playoff game. Like that's a good point to bring up, John, because I think that's another piece of this as well.
Yeah, and of course, all that being said, you could end up securing the number 1 seed. Kansas City gets in as the 7. They're the lowest seed. They knock off whoever the 2 is, and now they come in here in the divisional round anyway. It may not matter. And I think the way it is shaping out, John, you're probably going to play somebody that I think coming into the season would have been labeled a Super Bowl contender, whether it be
Yeah.
Buffalo, whether it be Baltimore, whether it be Kansas City. I think the way that this is all breaking down, especially if the Patriots beat Buffalo here on the 14th, there's a good chance you might be seeing them a third time at some point, whether it be in the wild card round or in the divisional round.
And don't sleep on Houston either, right? That
No,
defense
they're
is
starting to
elite,
play pretty good football. Yeah, it is.
Exactly. So I think, yeah, I think no matter what, like Denver and New England, I think are going to be the top 2 seeds, and it's just going to come down to you're going to have to play one of those elite QBs, maybe 2. It's just, do you play 3 of them, including one in the wild card round, or you play 2 of them in the divisional round and conference championship game?
Well, and the other thing to keep in mind too is, let's say Denver ends up the number 1 seed. You don't want to have to go out there potentially for an AFC championship
Yeah,
game.
I would
You'd
also
rather
agree
have
with you on
that
that.
game here. Yeah, because I think that might be the toughest place to play in the playoffs if they end up the number 1 seed and they win in the divisional round and they end up hosting the AFC championship game. I don't care what their offense is, and their offense is not very good. It's been inconsistent all year, but Sean Payton can coach. He can put together a game plan to beat any defense in this league, and then you got to go there 5,200 feet above sea level, the crowd, that you don't want to have to deal with that. So I think, look, the next 4 games after this bye are huge. You need some help too. You're not going to get the bye and the number 1 seed without some help. You need Denver to lose a couple of games here. Ideally, the Colts have fallen off. In a perfect world, the Denver Broncos fall off. If the Commanders convert that 2-point conversion last night, they still have to play Green Bay. They still have a couple tough games left.
Yeah.
You need them to lose because, again,
I
like
think
I
they
said,
still have
you
a
don't want
game
them.
against Kansas City, right?
They do. They still have a game against
Yeah.
Kansas City in Kansas City, and then they have the Packers at home. So, again, they have a couple to go out to Denver whether it be the divisional round or the AFC Championship game. Nonetheless, it's a good problem to have, right? I mean, we weren't having this conversation the last 4 years. It's nice to have that conversation finally again.
Yeah, it's nice to not be talking about draft position on December 1st. It's, we're talking about where they're going to play in the playoffs. And I think, look, as you project this forward, this is year 1 of Vrabel. It's probably year 2.5 of the roster rebuild, but year 1 of Vrabel, year 2 of May, year 2.5, 3 of the roster rebuild. And we're talking about a team that could be the number 1 seed. Like that's a good step forward there overall. Even if they don't make it to the AFC Championship game, I think you view it from 10,000 feet. That's a huge step forward.
Huge step forward. Now let's fast forward past the bye. You got 4 games left. Buffalo comes here. You go to Baltimore. You go to New York to take on the Jets. Come home for the season finale against the Miami Dolphins. How do you see those 4 games playing out ultimately?
Yeah, I think they're going to end up probably 3-1 because I think you beat the Jets, you beat the Dolphins, and you split with the Bills and the Ravens. Like I look at that Baltimore game because I think that might get flexed to a Sunday night game on the road in Baltimore Sunday night. And my thing is this with that game. I know the Ravens have struggled. They've been all over the place. I know Lamar Jackson's been bad recently, but Patriots had some trouble containing Justin Fields running the ball in that game against the Jets. Lamar Jackson is a way leveled up version of that. And it's one thing to game plan against that guy. It's one thing to practice against the scout team mobile quarterback. It's a whole other thing to see that guy in person and have to try to defend him. That we saw that with the 2019 Patriots. They were undefeated, went into Baltimore on a Sunday night and lost that game. Lamar ran all over the place. So that's the game that I'm like, that's the one I'm worried. But again, go 3-1, you're 14-3. I think that should be good enough for the 1 seed.
Yeah, you would think 13 wins can probably
Yeah.
clinch it for you. You're going to need help, though. I think Denver needs to lose a couple of games at least so that even if you somehow ended up with the same record, you get the tiebreakers against them and you end up getting the number 1 seed. Look, I think that the rest of the season and where they end up comes down to this game in 2 weeks when Buffalo comes here. You win that game, you pretty much have clinched the AFC East. You pretty much now put them in a position where they're going to end up the 6th or the 7th seed. And I think now you're in the driver's seat to potentially be the 1 seed, depending on what you do the following week. But there's no question that those are going to be the 2 games that in many ways are going to decide the path that this football team takes in the playoffs. And in a lot of ways, look, if they somehow won both of those games, then I think the conversation takes another turn, John. Now we're talking about them as the favorite in the AFC.
Yeah, if you beat Buffalo, then you go to Baltimore and win, and then let's just say, you went maybe you win out or maybe you rest guys that final game, we'll see. But then yeah, we'll be talking about a team that had beat Buffalo twice, went to Tampa and won, beat a resurgent Cincinnati team, albeit without Burrow, then beat a Ravens team on the road. Like, yeah, they would
Yeah.
be the best team if they win both of those games, they're the best team and look, Denver's had a great season. They're a really, really good team. But if the Patriots win both of those games, they're the best team in the AFC.
Yeah, and then like I said, again, the conversation now changes. And now I think we could realistically talk about them as potentially getting to Santa Clara and having a shot at winning a Super Bowl. And look, it's not that far-fetched. Let's not forget, a year ago, the Washington Commanders got to the NFC Championship game.
Yeah.
So, and I know what they are this year. They're 3-9 and they fell apart. That's a different conversation. We can have that conversation in the offseason. I will say this in regards to that conversation. I'm not so sure that should be – Patriot fans shouldn't be leery of that happening here. And the reason I say that is I think the Patriots are going to take a more organic approach to building this roster. They're going to do it through the draft. They're not going to try to bring in veterans that are going to, quote, get them over the top. That's not going to be the focus this offseason. I think where Washington went astray is they decided, okay, we got to the NFC title game. We're a step away from playing in the Super Bowl. How do we get there? We go out, we trade for Deebo Samuel, we sign Von Miller, we trade for Laramie Tunsil. I don't think the Patriots are going to do that. I think the Patriots are going to say, we have a young roster. We like our young players. We're going to look to supplement our young players with even more young players because, let's face it, this is a young man's league. You win with guys that are in their first and second contracts in this league. And so at the end of the day, they're going to take a completely different approach. And by the way, I like something you talked about the other day when you mentioned this, I believe, when you were on Nesson, and you mentioned it on EEI, that comparatively speaking, a lot of people want to compare this team to the 01 Patriots, but I think your comp is an even better comp to the 2010 Patriots because this is a young roster that you're also supplementing with some veterans in free agency, but your core moving forward is going to be the guys that have been drafted the last couple of years.
Yeah, and you go back to that time period, all the dudes that were super young, rookies, second-year guys in 2009, 10, and 11. Look, 2010, they were the 1 seed, got upset in the divisional round. 2011, they lost a Super Bowl that I think if Rob Gronkowski was healthy, they probably would have won that Super Bowl, but they lose a Super Bowl. And so those guys that got close those first couple times, a lot of them were big parts of that 2014 team that ultimately won a championship. So I think that's where, you kind of figure out this season and even the playoffs this year, what's your real core? We know May and Will Campbell and Henderson are going to be part of the core and Gonzalez, but what other guys are going to be part of that core? Like right now, it looks like Craig Woodson is going to be part of that core for the long term, right? It looks like Jared Wilson's going to be like just figuring out Kayshon Boutte as well, figuring out what other guys are going to be part of that core. And that was what they did so well in that 2009, 10, 11, 12 time period. They not only drafted supremely well, they figured out which guys to bring in, sign, supplement. So then by the time they got to 2014, they had probably the best. I mean, them in Seattle, that was the two best rosters in the NFL that played in that Super Bowl. And of course, they went on, they won 3 more from there. But that's where I compare this team to because there's so much youth. Whereas that 01 team, Brady was new, Belichick was new here, but a lot of those guys had played in the '96 Super Bowl against the Packers, and a lot of those other guys played in playoff games with Pete Carroll. And not a lot of guys on this roster right now that have played in the playoffs. So even for some of the vets, I mean, Morgan Moses, I don't think he's played in a playoff game, a very limited playoff experience, and he's been in the league 10 years. Right? It's a new thing for a lot of these guys, and that's something that I think where Mike Vrabel is going to be huge because I think he's also going to be cognizant of he was on that 01 team. They won a Super Bowl. Next year they stumbled, went 9-7, missed the playoffs. I think he's going to be cognizant of that as they move forward, not just through the rest of the season, but to your point, the offseason as well.
Yeah, I would say this to Patriot fans. Let's enjoy this. Let's enjoy where the rest of this season is going to go. But if you're worried that potentially with a quote tougher schedule next year, they could potentially end up like the Washington Commanders, I would tell you to not be worried about that happening.
And I would just say
I don't think that's going to happen, to be honest with you, because
yeah.
I think their approach is going to be different this offseason and how they continue to build this roster out.
Yeah, and I would just say, like, next year, they could win 2 fewer games, but be a better team because they're gonna have a much tougher schedule. Like, they could have a better roster, be more capable of going deep in the playoffs, and maybe go 11-6 instead of 13-4 because their schedule is a lot tough. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, but then when you watch them, you're like, "Oh, this team's better than last year." They're just playing a much tougher schedule.
Yeah, and listen again. Does the schedule matter? Absolutely. Have they capitalized on the schedule? Absolutely. But I think we need, as I said a few weeks ago, I think we need to move away from that conversation now because, look, teams can also botch playing an easy schedule, okay? And they could screw it up and not be good. The fact that they haven't done that, the fact that they've exceeded expectations and taken advantage of their schedule speaks to the job that Vrabel has done. It speaks to the talent on this roster, and it speaks to the development of Drake May. Everything has come together for him because, again, had none of those things come together for them, John, I think it's a different conversation. They're nowhere near as good as they have been. But because everything has come together and it's clicked, they've taken advantage of that soft schedule.
How many times in the last 3 years, John, did they lose to bad teams? Like, they had a relatively easy schedule the last couple of years and lost to a lot of those teams.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
like,
Go back to
yes.
2023, you get blown out here by the New Orleans Saints, 34 nothing.
Yeah, and you lose 6-0 to a Chargers team that year that was about to fire their coach. The Giants beat you 10-7, that Colts game, and I mean, we could go on down the list. Like, I mean, last year, this weekend last year, I think it was November 30th, 2024, the Colts with Anthony Richardson went on an 18-play drive plus a 2-point conversion to win at Gillette Stadium. Like, light year of difference with and
Mhm.
also the Colts too, but a light year of difference with the Patriots from then to now. So yeah, I mean, does the schedule help? If they had a harder schedule, would they be, 9 wins instead of 11? Sure, but then we'd still be talking about a potential number 1 seed or number 2 seed. Like, they're still a really good team. Yes, they've had an easier schedule. They're still a great team.
Yeah, and I think people nationally more so need to acknowledge now that this is a good football team. They've started to do it in recent weeks, but I think now we can look at them and objectively say, look, this is a good football team. And I think another barometer of a good football team to me, John, is when you're a good football team, you beat the hell out of bad football teams. They did that tonight.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, right? You don't just squeak by and not play well against bad teams. You put your foot on the gas pedal, you get up 30-7 at halftime, and you dominate most of the game. So I agree with you. I think that's a great, like Carolina, they're much better now, but earlier in the year they were a bad team and Patriots beat them by 29 points. Like, that's what you should do when you play a bad team on your schedule.
Yeah, take care of business. And like you said, they
Tennessee,
went up.
Cleveland
Yeah,
blew them
yeah.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what good teams do. You don't lose to bad teams. When you're a good football team that's a contender, you take care of teams on your schedule that aren't very good, that are struggling. They're the teams you're supposed to beat. You go out and you beat them. The Patriots have certainly done that. All right, John, final thoughts here before we wrap it up.
Yeah, final thoughts is, they head into the bye. It's been an awesome, awesome turnaround here. I think they got to take advantage of this bye, be as healthy as possible coming out of it. And really, John, I look at this last 4 games. I think if they can win 3 out of 4, they'll be the 1 seed. And I think really, you hit the nail on that. They win that Buffalo game, then you really just have to beat the Jets and the Dolphins at the end of the year, and you're the 1 seed. So, 2 weeks to prepare for that game. That's gonna be probably the biggest game, John, at Gillette Stadium since 2021, maybe? I mean, it's been a long time since there's gonna be a
Been a
game
long
that big
time.
at
I'd
Gillette
even go
Stadium.
further back. Honestly, probably the biggest game since the 2018 AFC Championship game when Jacksonville was here. I don't think that's hyperbole because if you really think about it, did they play games of this magnitude in 19? They got bounced by Mike Vrabel and his
Yeah.
Tennessee Titans in that wild card game, Tom Brady's last game. 2021, I mean, they had a couple big games that year here, but I'm not sure they were games of that
Yeah, I mean, like, the
magnitude.
Brady return game was huge, but that
I
was
would
the
say that
Brady
probably the
story, you know?
right. I would say at the very least it's since then because obviously that was a big story in 2021, him coming back with the Bucks and the Belichick Brady argument and everything else. So I would say to your point that this is probably the biggest game since that game anyway.
Yeah, and I think and it's nice that they're in these games again, and I'm really glad they have 2 weeks to prepare for this one.
Yeah, that's going to be huge. And it's something that people aren't going to talk about enough. They're going to think about the bye and players resting, but you have 2 weeks to get ready for this Buffalo team. And Buffalo's got Cincinnati coming into town on Sunday. Cincinnati's desperate. They still think they can make the playoffs. That's why they brought Joe Burrow back. With Joe Burrow back, Jamar Chase back, that's a good football team, man. And all of a sudden, Al Golden has that defense playing some good football. If the Bengals win this game on Sunday, the Patriots might already be essentially clinched. They may have already clinched the AFC East in essence by the time we get to that matchup in a couple weeks. So we'll see. I mean, again, if they're up by 3 games, it would take a monumental collapse by them down the stretch and Buffalo running the table for them to blow the division. And to be quite honest with you, I don't see that being the case because even though Buffalo won in Pittsburgh on Sunday, they still didn't look great. There's something wrong with them as a football team. Now, are they good enough to come in here in 2 weeks and win that game? 100%. This Patriots team is not at that elite level quite yet, but based on what we've seen from them and their ability to go on the road and win, and they're undefeated on the road, and now they're playing better at home. The Patriots will be favored in that game, and rightfully so. And again, if Buffalo continues to have some of the problems that they've had this season with inconsistent quarterback play, a lack of talent on the perimeter, their defense really struggling to stop the run, if those problems continue to haunt that football team coming into this game in a couple weeks, Patriots are going to be in a pretty good spot to potentially win that game. But nonetheless, John, I think you hit the nail on the head. 11-2. I don't think any of us saw it coming, and enjoy it. Enjoy it because good times are here again. Hopefully the Patriots can keep it going. That'll do it for this week's episode of the Patriots Pulse post-game show. Again, the Patriots defeat the New York Giants on Monday Night Football. For my partner, WEI John Lyons, I'm John Saritas. We'll be back with you in a couple weeks. Until then, peace.